So water displays like the purest form of salvation and the purest form of suffering conceptually. So suffering is basically when you're giving somebody else your buoyancy that you're generating, right? So water is analogical to many different systems. Like think of any analogy, think of anything anybody's ever used water for as an analogy, right? So this applies to all those different activities, which is all those different ways of suffering. Like there's a gazillion ways of suffering, but in its purest form, it's just like giving somebody else your buoyancy. So if you want to experience this directly, like think about your experiences treading water and basically lifting something up. So creating an upward force. So let's say you're preventing a 5-pound weight from sinking or a 35-pound weight, right? Or let's make it personal. Let's say you're trying to keep somebody from drowning, right? And it's a crazy person. So you're trying to keep them drowning by holding them up on the end of a stick. So it's like you're needing to provide whatever 5 pounds of upward force to keep them out from sinking, right? Or if you have a 15-pound weight, you need to provide 15 pounds of upward force with your swimming motion, with your buoyancy. And so that's generated by your metabolism, your life force. And when you're doing it in water, it's amplified. So you'll gas really quick. Like most people, if they have to hold 25 pounds over their head in the water, like they will exhaust themselves in minutes or seconds. And so that gift of the metabolism towards facilitating the conditions for something else's metabolism, right? For something else's life, you're giving up your position in life where the buoyancy is, where you're at the surface, right? Like able to breathe, but also supported by the medium, like you're there. And the suffering is the transmission of that energy. It's the transmission of buoyancy. It's the fatigue that you feel swimming in its rawest form. It's the giving. It's the giving of the heart. Like aquatic or a fluidic cardio is like the closest just generic activity to the giving of the heart. Anytime you're swimming, it's basically just the heart giving itself over to the buoyancy. And so when you do that for something, if you're trying to basically keep reality at bay for a condition that you want, right? So you don't want your 15-pound weight to go underwater because you're in the CrossFit class. That wants to happen naturally. You're going to keep that from happening with the energy of your heart. Or if you're the person's drowning, you're going to use your metabolic output to make them float. And you'll find that if anybody that does that, if you can't stop doing it, you'll die within minutes. Like even if you were to say like, oh, be in the middle of the ocean, and your child's going to be constantly there. So when this is happening with somebody else, what's happening if you're trying to suffer for somebody else is that they're either too young or they're psychotically panicked to where they can't float, they can't remain buoyant, they can't casually exist, so they're flailing about, pulling themselves under with their own motions, right? They can't understand the water kinesthetically at all, and so they pull themselves underwater with their own motions. So if you're going to try and save somebody from that, that's what you're always going to be suffering against or suffering for. It's just kind of rabid stupidity where every action is your enemy and everything they do brings you down. Yeah, Asher? No. We don't know what it does. No.
Why not?
That's Chad's. They have a YouTube channel called Humble Growth, and they do stuff. I'll get off my phone in a minute. So if you see yourself coming over there, tell them I sent you. They're business affiliates with whatever this company is that I have here. So check them out. Okay, in a second. I gotta get this thought out. I'm almost done. So yeah, the only reason that you're ever going to be holding somebody else up in the water, unless you're playing, right? Like if you're doing this playfully, that's the only other time that you exert your heart in the same way that you do when you suffer. What? You want to get in, or do you want a ball?
She wants to go in, I think.
You want to help her? So some people don't like that, like drowning people, they pull you under. And anyway, the moral of the story is you can't do that. You can't hold up anything out of the water. What ball?
I don't know. She just wants the ball.
You can't hold anything out of the water like that. You can't exert your heart for any amount of time without just totally exhausting yourself. It's just impossible. The only way that you can exert your heart like that is like through games and playfulness. And with that training, you get better and better at exerting your heart, so it becomes less and less of a life-threatening activity to exert the heart, to suffer. What do you want?
A bowl?
Do you want your little raft? You want your floaty?
Is this a little raft?
But when you're playing with somebody, or when you're genuinely suffering for them, right? Like if you're suffering for somebody, if you're holding them up, yeah.
You know why? You know that time that you know why that time you couldn't catch me that time and we were playing tag at the skate park?
Yeah.
I was doing full sprint.
Full sprint. You want to play tag now?
No.
So anytime you're holding somebody up in the water, right, holding somebody up in the medium within which they're drowning, you're being a conduit by which the medium is supporting them. So as you tread water and as you exert your heart and give the exertion of your heart to their buoyancy, you're held up by the water in that instance, right? You're doing penance for them, right? That's what it means to pray for somebody or whatever, is basically you're treading water, and the output or the exertion. I will, if you give me 5 minutes. Just let me finish this thought.
I'm so angry.
Let me finish this thought, and I'll get back in. I don't even want to get back in. This is the second time.
What?
Here, I'll throw you in 5 minutes. So, okay, I'll come back in if you let me just get this out. So, yeah, suffering is any exertion, any heart exertion, right, as stereotypically experienced in swimming, right, but experienced in all sorts of exertion like that. That is suffering, and so it's in your penance. Like this is why these activities have penance associated with them, is that your movements, like the way that you're moving, is generating thrust that's holding them up. Your movements are causing the water to behave in such a way that they are supported. That's prayer. Right? So when you're doing it, they get to experience that, and then a lot of people will pick up on it and learn it, and then you no longer have to support them in that way. Because when you're supporting them, they're learning, right? But if you say, hey, this is crazy, I can't support people, I'm not God, I can't do this, I'm going to rely on truth to support them.
That can come in with us?
Yeah, I'm going to get in 1 second. I'm almost done. So you go, oh, I can't do this, I'm drowning, we're both going to drown here, I'm going to put my foot down on truth, I'm going to stand on the rock. And then you go, oh, I'm going to channel this energy from the rock into them, and I can hold them up an infinite length of time. Right? Like if I imagine touching the ground and holding up a 15-pound weight, or touching the ground and keeping somebody from drowning, it's a totally different ball game. That person is no longer supported by the medium, they're supported by the rock. If you look at the force transfer, the ground of the bottom of the pool is coming up and supporting that weight or that thing. So then they also don't get the experience of swimming, of being supported by the medium. They're supported by the bottom, which they're infinitely separated from. Not infinitely, but they're separated from it because you're giving them all their weight from the bottom. And so the truth could be anything from like scientific truth, like telling somebody, or even God, like Christ, Jesus truth, right? Then when you find that though, and you try and give that truth to other people, it might save them. And in fact, it's the reasonable thing to do in a no shit situation. You want to rely on truth, right? Like in a no shit situation, like, oh, we don't want to all starve. You want to rely on truth. And that's why science makes so much food. It's reliant on truth, right? It's reliant on the fact of the matter. But then nobody gets the experience of being sustained or by buoyancy, by life, or by having the water directly interact with you. And that's God. So societies that rely too much on truth, the ground of being, they lose their connection to God. I was already in earlier. I'm not a bad parent, okay? I swam. Asher, hey, stop. Stop. I'm gonna get in a second. Okay, so that's when it stops being, so a lot of the times people are like, when they're searching for God, well, that's when they're most swimmy and in the water. They have like, you'll find that people that are the most insightful people are like psychotically, desperately thrashing through the water, right? When they have an awakening or whatever, spiritual awakening. And then then when you find truth, you stop having to thrash. If you find a truth that you can stand on, you lose your connection to water again. So it's not the foundational truth of things isn't that it. And then the other foundational truth is the buoyancy, right? The buoyancy of things, which if you're going to share that with anybody, it's suffering, right? To actually give my buoyancy away, I'm suffering. To give my connection or my relationship with God to anybody, especially in a way that actually helps them, that I have to suffer the same way that I suffer when I tread water. And then only when I suffer and I do that, when I give them my buoyancy that I have, my swimming ability, and I lift them up out of the water, it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. So it's like you can't do it forever to try and save somebody. You're being lifted up, or you're like, you make somebody buoyant long enough for them to feel that the water is what's lifting them up, not the ground, not you, but that shared field, that's you're creating a field together that is floating, right? When you're holding somebody's hand and you're pushing them up and you're swimming, you're making an electromagnetic field together that is lifting them. If you're touching the ground, you're creating an electromagnetic field with the ground that is lifting them up off the ground. And so that's what makes the most sense, right? Is to if somebody needs the support of the ground, like then you want to ground to the ground. So if people think like, oh, I found, that's the point. It's not, the idea is not to find the ground, and the idea is not to know about the water or whatever, but to like you're swimming and you're like it's the rock hard truth and the infinite unknowing becomes like a river or a lake. Yeah. Yeah.